Hey guys, tonight we're taking a slow, cozy stroll down one of history's most legendary highways, the Silk Road. Imagine yourself standing on a dusty, sun-warmed trail stretching thousands of miles from East Asia to the Mediterranean, where traders, travelers, and nomads have for centuries carried far more than silk and spices. Snacks. Yes, those little bites you munch on for energy and comfort on long journeys have a history as rich, and layered as the road itself. You probably won't survive this trip without some ancient trail snacks fueling your step. That's okay, because tonight we're going to unpack the origins of those forgotten Silk Road snacks. Those humble but essential foods that crisscrossed continents and cultures. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always fun to see who's tuning in from. Where now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, where did it all begin? The Silk Road. That vast network of trade routes was not a single road, but a web connecting empires, cities, and cultures from the Han Dynasty in China to the Roman Empire and beyond. It wasn't just about silk though, that was the headline grabber, but also about spices, ideas, religions, and yes, food, snacks, in particular, held a special place in this exchange. Traders needed portable, long-lasting, and energy-rich foods to survive days or weeks on the trail, especially in the harsh deserts and mountain passes. Early Silk Road snacks were born from necessity and resourcefulness, and from that necessity came a delicious legacy. One of the earliest and most essential snack categories was dried fruits and nuts. These weren't just tasty, they were calorie-dense, lightweight, and resistant to spoilage. Imagine dates, apricots, figs, and raisins from Central Asia and the Middle East, packed tightly into woven baskets or clay pots. These fruits provided quick sugars to tired travelers, while nuts, like walnuts and almonds, added protein and fats. Interestingly, historians still argue whether these dried snacks were primarily consumed by nomadic traders or settled merchants, because evidence suggests both groups innovated independently. Nomads might have favored nuts and hardier dried fruits for their resilience, while settled merchants could afford to carry more delicate treats. Beyond their practical use, these snacks also acted as cultural messengers. A dried apricot from the Iranian plateau, for example, was not just food, but a token of the landscape and climate it came from, carrying a story as rich as its flavor. And here's a quirky fact for you. Some ancient texts mention travelers using fruit skins as kind of makeshift wrappers like edible packaging, long before modern snack bags existed. Imagine peeling back a dried date skin, not just for taste, but as a container for tiny seeds or spices. So, the origins of Silk Road snacks are woven tightly into the fabric of trade routes themselves. A blend of survival strategy and cultural exchange that laid the groundwork for centuries of delicious discoveries. You're still trekking along the ancient trail, the sun beating down, but your pack feeling a little lighter thanks to the trusty dried fruits and nuts you stashed earlier. Now, let's talk about these staples, the real backbone of Silk Road. Snacking, how they became the fuel for caravans and the seeds of early snack culture. Dried fruits, especially, were the MVPs. Imagine juicy apricots sun-dried on clay rooftops in Central Asia, their sweetness intensifying as water evaporates. These apricots, along with dates from the Middle East and figs from the Mediterranean, were not just preserved for convenience, but prized delicacies. Caravans carried them in woven baskets or leather pouches, sometimes sprinkled with powdered sugar or honey when available, to provide an energy boost on the long, dusty stretches. Nuts were just as crucial. Almonds, walnuts, pistachios, and pine nuts provided concentrated fats and proteins, essential for maintaining strength during grueling journeys. You might picture a trader sitting by a campfire, cracking open walnuts and tossing the shells into the embers as the evening cooled. Here's a fun tidbit. Pistachios were so treasured that in some regions they were considered a luxury snack reserved for nobility or successful merchancy. It's kind of edible status symbol. Historians still argue whether nomadic groups or settled merchants first popularized these dried staples as snacks. Some evidence points to nomads inventing early drying techniques to preserve wild fruits and nuts, while others suggest that agricultural societies refined these methods for trade. Either way, the process of drying removing moisture to inhibit spoilage was a game changer for food, longevity, and portability. Interestingly, drying wasn't just limited to fruits and nuts. Vegetables and even herbs were dried for use as seasoning and medicinal aids, adding layers of flavor and health benefits to the otherwise plain staples. Here's a quirky little fact. Some travelers reportedly carried dried mulberries as snacks, but these berries doubled as a makeshift sweetener for tea or porridge. Imagine munching on a handful of mulberries, feeling their subtle sweetness while the campfire crackles. The importance of these dry snacks wasn't merely practical. They also shaped social rituals on the Silk Road. Sharing a handful of nuts or a few dried fruits was a gesture of hospitality and trust between traders from vastly different cultures. Over time, these humble foods became a symbol of connection, transcending language and distance. So next time you snack on dried apricots or almonds, remember, you're tasting a tradition thousands of years old, carried over deserts and mountains, by people who knew that a simple bite could mean the difference between exhaustion and endurance. The sun dips a little lower now, and your footsteps slow to a rhythm, carried on by the scents that have long trailed the Silk Road. Aromatic, exotic spices and flavorings that transformed simple snacks into unforgettable treats. I should chew on that handful of dried apricots. Imagine how those early traders must have craved more than just sustenance. They wanted variety, excitement, and a hint of the unknown. Spices like cinnamon, cardamom, and black pepper weren't just seasoning. They were the ancient world's version of a snack's personality makeover. These aromatic hitchhikers traveled thousands of miles, often crammed into tiny pouches or tucked inside the folds of silk, quietly infusing everything from roasted nuts to dried fruits with new dimensions of flavor. In fact, cinnamon was so rare and prized that it was often gifted to royalty, hidden away as a symbol of status. But here's where it gets really fascinating. Historians still argue whether the Silk Road's spice trade was more about culinary enhancement or medicinal uses. Some scholars suggest that spices were valued primarily for their ability to preserve foods and ward off illness, rather than just tasting imagine munching on something spiced, not just because it's tasty, but because it might keep the scurvy away. Beyond the well-known spices, lesser-known flavorings like sumac, saffron, and dried rose petals made their way onto the snack scene. Rose petals, for example, were sometimes candied or used to scent nuts and dried fruits, adding a floral twist that must have felt like a fragrant oasis amid the dust and grit of travel. And, for a quirky tidbit, some travelers believed that carrying aromatic spices in their pouches not only improved snack flavor, but also kept away evil spirits and bad luck. Sort of ancient food superstition that probably made snacking a little more comforting under the stars. Imagine sitting around a fire, passing around spiced nuts or fruits, the complex aromas blending with the night air and stories shared between traders of different lands. Those flavorings weren't just taste enhancers, they were cultural bridges, binding disparate peoples through sensory experience. So, the next time you sprinkle cinnamon on your morning oats, think about how that tiny stick once journeyed thousands of miles, turning ordinary trail snacks into treasures worth savoring. The shadows lengthen, and as you trudge on, your thoughts turn to something a little heartier: preserved meats and jerky. When energy needs shift from sweet quick fixes to sustain strength. Protein becomes king on the Silk Road's long stretches. Imagine trading posts filled with fragrant, dried strips of beef, mutton, or even camel meats, cured and dried to last without refrigeration, ready to power traders through desert days and mountain nights. Preserved meats were early protein powerhouses, crafted using a dazzling variety of regional methods. In Central Asia, for instance, the nomadic peoples perfected air-drying techniques, hanging strips of meat high in the wind to dry quickly and keep insects at bay. Meanwhile, in Persia and the Middle East, meats might be salted or spiced heavily before drying, adding layers of preservation and flavor. Here's a surprising twist. Some ancient records describe a kind of jerky made, not from common animals, but from yak or wild game, reflecting how local environments shaped snack options. In Mongolia, for example, dried horse meat was reportedly a staple, while in China, duck or fish might be preserved similarly. Historians still argue whether these preserved meats were mainly for sustenance or held symbolic value in certain cultures. In some societies, dried meats could be ceremonial gifts or signs of hospitality, not just survival food. One quirky tidbit: there's evidence suggesting that some traders carried crocodile dung as a component in ancient Egyptian sunblock. But oddly enough, preserved meats and their curing processes sometimes involved unexpected natural additives like tree resins or herbs to keep spoilage at early bioengineering for snack safety. Imagine biting into a strip of spiced dried meat after a long day's march, chewy, salty, and packed with concentrated flavor. It's the kind of snack that feels like a small victory against the harshness of the road. So, while dried fruits and nuts fueled the quick energy bursts, preserved meats supplied the stamina and grit needed for the journey, making them a crucial part of Silk Road snack lore. The road winds onward, and as you settle into your pace, you feel the comforting crunch of something grain-based between your teeth. Ancient rice cakes and grains, those humble, portable energy sources, have a surprisingly rich history on the Silk Road, bridging east and west with their simple, sustaining presence. Rice, while a staple in East Asia, wasn't just eaten as a steaming bowl of porridge or sticky sushi along the route. Early traders developed ways to transform grains into portable snacks: rice cakes, ardent breads, and grain bars that could survive the long journey without crumbling to dust. These snacks were practical fuel, lightweight and packed with carbohydrates, perfect for a quick energy hit in Central Asia and parts of the Middle East. Wheat and barley were similarly processed into dense, durable cakes, sometimes flavored with honey or sesame seeds to add taste and nutrition. Imagine a caravan trader tearing off a piece of such a cake by firelight. It's a slightly sweet, nutty flavor, a small comfort after a day's travel. Historians still argue whether these grain snacks evolved primarily from culinary innovation or from necessity. As some suggest, they originated more as emergency rations than everyday treats. Either way, their durability and energy density made them indispensable. Here's a quirky fringe tidbit. In some parts of ancient China, rice cakes were often shaped into symbolic forms. Dragons, clouds, or animals, and were not only eaten, but also used in rituals or as gifts between traders, imbuing snacks with cultural significance beyond mere sustenance. Interestingly, grains like millet and sorghum, less known today, but common then, also made their way into snack forms. These grains offered resilience in harsher climates, supporting communities along less hospitable stretches of the Silk Road. Rice, cake, and grain snacks were not just food, they were a connection to home, a taste of comfort amid foreign landscapes. A bite of a rice cake might have reminded travelers of family meals far away, grounding them even as the vast trade network pulled them across continents. So next time you enjoy a rice cracker or granola bar, take a moment to appreciate the ancient, road that first turned grains into portable, shareable snacks for weary travelers. As the night deepens, you reach for a sweeter bite, and your mind drifts to the slow, winding journey of sugar itself, sweet treasure that transformed early candies along the Silk Road. The story of sweet treats and early candies is one of gradual discovery, innovation, and cultural blending. Sugar didn't start out as the common household staple it is today. Its origins trace back to the Indian subcontinent, where early sugarcane cultivation gave rise to crystallized sugar, initially a rare luxury for elites and merchants. Over centuries, knowledge of sugar making spread westward along the Silk Road, slowly changing how snacks were sweetened. Candies were born from this journey. Early sweets took the form of crystallized sugar lumps, honey-coated nuts, or fruit paste sticky, sweet morsels, easy to carry and savor. Picture a caravan pausing to share candied dates or honey-dipped almonds. The sweetness, a brief but cherished relief from the monotony of the trail. Historians still argue whether these early candies were consumed primarily as treats or medicinal items, given that sugar and honey were often prescribed for health ailments. Either way, the merging of sweetness with practical nutrition created a new snack category. A quirky fact: in ancient Persia, sugar-coated rose petals were popular, combining floral fragrance with the sugary delight of snack that's as much about pleasure as sustenance. And in China, ginger candy made from preserved ginger slices was not only a treat, but also a remedy for digestion and cold symptoms. The rise of sweet treats also reflects broader cultural shifts. As sugar became more accessible, it began to influence local cuisines and snack traditions along the Silk Road, seeding the creation of confectionery arts that would eventually flourish in Europe. Imagine the delight of a traveler biting into a sticky, sweet morsel after days of dry, salty snacks, a small taste of luxury on a grueling journey. These candies were sometimes shared as precious gifts or used to seal important trade deals, showing that snacks carried symbolic as well as practical weight. So, next time you savor a piece of candy or honey-roasted nut, remember you're indulging in a tradition thousands of years old, one that traveled across deserts and mountains, sweetening the steps of history. As dawn breaks over the rugged landscape, you find yourself drawn to the soothing ritual of tea drink that shaped not only Silk Road's culture, but also the snacks that accompanied it. Tea and its snack companions formed a duo as iconic as the caravans themselves, a blend of warmth, social connection. Tea's journey from China into Central Asia and beyond is well documented, with leaves traded alongside silk and spices. But what made the experience special were the snacks that complemented it. Imagine a trader breaking open a chunk of compressed tea brick, pouring hot water over it, and pairing the bitter brew with something sweet, salty, or crunchy to balance the flavors. In Mongolia and Tibet, for instance, butter, tea, rich, salty concoction was often accompanied by dried cheese curds or small, hard biscuits made from barley flour. These snacks weren't just tasty, they provided much-needed calories in harsh climates. Historians still argue how exactly tea influenced snack development along the Silk Road, whether the need to pair tea with snacks led to new recipes, or if existing snacks found new life alongside the beverage. Either way, the cultural interplay is undeniable. A quirky tidbit: some Central Asian traders carried tea cakes, compressed cakes of tea leaves, mixed with nuts or dried fruits that could be broken off in small pieces to nibble on as snacks themselves. This blurring of drink and food lines reflects the ingenious ways travelers adapted to their environment. The tea break was also a social ritual, a moment to pause, share stories, and build trust among traders from vastly different cultures. Snacks shared over steaming cups became tokens of friendship and hospitality, turning mundane moments into lasting memories. Imagine the fragrant steam rising as you nibble on a salty biscuit, the flavors mingling with the cool morning air and the distant chatter of fellow travelers. Tea and its snacks formed a sensory anchor, grounding people on a road that was often unpredictable and perilous. So next time you sip tea with a cookie or a handful of nuts, you're tapping into an ancient tradition of comfort and connection, one that fueled some of history's greatest journeys. The relentless sun beats down as you climb higher into the desert hills, your camel's steady footsteps marking time across the vast, shifting dunes. Camel caravans were the lifeblood of the Silk Road's most grueling sections, and they demanded snacks designed specifically for the desert's toughest travelers, both human and beast. Camels, known as the ships of the desert, carried precious cargo across harsh terrains where water was scarce and sandstorms frequent. For their riders, the challenge was survival, and snacks had to be lightweight, durable, and packed with energy. Imagine the simple, salty, dried cheeses, dense grain cakes, and salted nuts that sustained traders and nomads alike, providing quick calories and electrolytes lost in the heat. Historians still argue the extent to which camel caravans influenced snack innovation. Did the need to support these animals and their drivers push development of particular foods, or were these snacks more a reflection of local culinary traditions? Regardless, camel caravans shaped much of the Silk Road's food culture. A quirky detail: some traders carried salty blocks made from dried animal blood and fat, an acquired taste for sure, but a nutrient-dense snack that could stave off hunger and provide vital minerals. If that sounds like ancient energy bars, you're not far off. The environment dictated not only the snacks' composition, but also their packaging. Snacks had to be wrapped tightly in animal skins or woven red baskets to keep out sand and moisture. Preservation was paramount. One wrong bite of spoiled food could spell disaster miles from any settlement. Picture a caravan leader passing around small pieces of dried meat or nut clusters as a reward after a hard day's travel. The camaraderie, palpable under the desert stars. These snacks weren't just a fuel. They were morale boosters and symbols of resilience. So next time you think about snacks, remember those tough desert travelers and their camels who relied on nothing but resourceful, long-lasting bites to conquer one of history's most unforgiving landscapes. The sun dips low, painting the horizon in deep oranges and purples. As your journey brings you to Tangier tastes, it's the mysterious spread of tamarind and other sour fruits that surprise palates and traveled borders and climates along the Silk Road. These puckering delights added a zing that cut through the often heavy, salty snacks of the trail. Tamarind, with its sticky pulp and sharp sweet flavor, originated in tropical Africa, but found a second home in India, spreading east and west with traders. It was more than just a fruit. It was a flavor revolution. Tamarind was preserved by drying and could be formed into cakes or paste, sportable, long-lasting snacks that brightened the dull march of the day. Historians still argue exactly how tamarind spread so widely, whether it was through deliberate cultivation or accidental transport by travelers, but its presence is undeniable from the Middle East to China. Other sour fruits, like sumac, berries, and dried plums, also made their way along the route, each carrying their own unique tang. These fruits were often combined with spices or sugar to create snack pastes, chutneys, or coatings that kept flavor exciting. A quirky tidbit: in some cultures, sour fruit snacks were believed to aid digestion and were eaten after heavy meals to cleanse the palate and the body. A prehistoric version of your fancy after dinner mint. Imagine biting into a piece of tamarind paste after a long day, its tartness snapping awake your senses like a cold splash of water. For weary travelers, these sour treats were small jolts of refreshment, turning monotony into flavored adventure. So, while dried fruits and nuts were the dependable staples, it was these tangy surprises that added zest and variety, reminding everyone on the road that even in hardship, there was room for a little culinary excitement. Night settles softly as you reach for something less familiar fermented snack. Tangy and bold, an acquired taste that speaks of ancient preservation, wisdom, and daring palates. Fermented foods along the Silk Road were more than just snacks. They were living, breathing experiments in survival and flavor. Fermentation wasn't just a way to preserve food, it transformed it, developing complex tastes and textures that fresh or dried foods simply couldn't offer. In various regions, travelers carried fermented soybean cakes, pickled vegetables, and even fermented fish pastes, all designed to last through long journeys and supply essential nutrients. Historians still argue how widespread fermented snacks were among Silk Road travelers, partly because their pungent nature often went undocumented or was described only in vague terms. Some suggest that fermented snacks were mainly local delicacies that didn't always travel far, while others argue they played a larger role in the diet of nomads and traders. A quirky fact, in some parts of Central Asia, fermented mare's milk, called kumis, was not only a drink but also a nutritional snack, prized for its probiotic qualities and believed to boost stamina. Fermentation also allowed preservation without salt, a valuable alternative where salt was scarce or expensive. This meant that travelers could carry a variety of flavors and nutrients, expanding their culinary horizons on the road. Imagine the sharp bite of pickled vegetables after days of bland, dry snacks, a burst of flavor that wakes up your tongue and offers a glimpse of home-cooked meals even miles from civilization. So, these fermented snacks weren't just survival foods. They were badges of cultural identity and culinary bravery, adding depth to the otherwise straightforward snack landscape of the Silk Road. The salt of the earth, quite literally, was indispensable on the Silk Road. Salty snacks held a curious place both as necessities and luxuries on these ancient trails. Salt wasn't just seasoning. It was a vital mineral, a preservative, and in many cases, a form of currency. Snacks salted just right were prized for their taste and their ability to stave off dehydration and electrolyte imbalance during grueling treks. Think of salted nuts and seeds, hardened cheese curds, and salty dried meats. These snacks provided a burst of flavor and essential minerals, balancing out the sweet dried fruits and the sometimes bland grains. Salted snacks were especially vital for travelers crossing deserts, where water was scarce and sweat abundant. Historians still argue whether salt's value was primarily practical or symbolic. As some evidence suggests, salt snacks were used as gifts or trade goods, carrying status and goodwill across cultures. A quirky detail, some caravans reportedly carried blocks of salt themselves, both as a preservation tool and as trade currency. Imagine chewing on a tiny salty nugget that was essentially a piece of valuable white gold you could eat. Salt also played a role in snack preservation, keeping meats and cheeses edible for months. The chemical magic of salt drew moisture out of food, making it inhospitable for bacteria and molds. Imagine biting into a salted nut or a crumbly chunk of cheese under a blazing sun. It's a sharp salt flavor, waking up your taste buds and replenishing lost minerals. It was a lifeline as much as a treat. So, salty snacks weren't just about flavor. They were survival tools, cultural tokens, and sometimes even currency on one of history's most demanding trade routes. You continue along the dusty path, reaching for a handful of nuts and seeds, not just the familiar almonds and walnuts, but a surprising array of lesser-known varieties that journeyed far and wide across the Silk Road. These tiny powerhouses of nutrition were prized for their portability, long shelf life, and dense calories, perfect for travelers pushing through endless miles. Beyond the well-trodden almonds, pistachios, and walnuts, there were pine nuts harvested from mountain pines, hemp seeds with their subtle, nutty flavor, and even tiger nut small tubers, eaten as nuts that carried regional significance. These nuts and seeds reflected the diverse environments and cultures the Silk Road connected. From the rugged Himalayas to the arid steppes, historians still argue the extent to which these lesser-known nuts influenced local diets, partly because their small size and perishable nature made archaeological evidence scarce, but written records and culinary traditions hint at their widespread use. A quirky fact: in some parts of Central Asia, pine nuts were so valued that they were often reserved for special occasions, almost like edible gems. Traders might have hoarded these tiny treasures, sharing them sparingly during festive gatherings. Seeds like sesame were also important, not just for snacking, but for pressing into oils used in cooking and preservation. Sesame seeds were often toasted and mixed into snack bars or baked goods, adding flavor and nutrition. Imagine sitting at a bustling Silk Road market, the scent of toasted seeds and nuts mingling in the air as traders haggle and share stories. These tiny snacks were more than sustenance, they were cultural ambassadors, carrying the tastes of distant lands in every bite. So, the next time you sprinkle sesame seeds on your salad or snack on a handful of pine nuts, remember you're connecting with the rich, ancient tradition of diverse flavors and survival wisdom. You find yourself in a bustling Silk Road marketplace, alive with color, sound, and the mingling aromas of countless exotic snacks. These snack marketplaces were more than mere trading posts. They were vibrant hubs where travelers exchanged not just goods, but stories, culture, and friendship, making them pivotal points on the ancient routes. Imagine narrow lanes lined with stalls piled high with dried fruits, nuts, spices, and strange treats from distant lands. Merchants called out their wares, enticing passers-by with samples of tangy tamarind pastes, crunchy rice cakes, or spiced jerky. This was a place where cultures collided and blended, and snacks became symbols of identity and connection. Historians still argue how much these marketplaces shaped snack innovation. Did traders invent new treats to appeal to diverse tastes, or did existing local snacks simply spread through trade? Likely both, as these hubs fostered culinary experimentation and fusion. A quirky tidbit: some markets featured snack storytellers, individuals who not only sold food, but shared tales and histories behind each delicacy, turning snack buying into an immersive cultural experience. Imagine buying a handful of spiced nuts while listening to the story of a distant land's harvest festival. Religious and cultural diversity also played out here, with certain stalls offering snacks, catering to dietary laws, ensuring travelers from various faiths could find suitable foods. This inclusivity helped knit together the Silk Road's vast human tapestry. These marketplaces were not just centers of commerce, but of diplomacy and camaraderie, places where a shared snack could seal a deal or spark a lifelong friendship. So, the next time you wander a vibrant market or a food festival, remember you're stepping into a tradition thousands of years old, where snacks were the sweet currency of human connection. The morning sun rises gently as you ponder how deeply religious dietary laws influenced snack choices along the Silk Road. In this vast network of cultures and beliefs, what was safe or sacred to eat wasn't just about taste or survival, it was about faith, identity, and respect. Travelers from diverse backgrounds, Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, Jews, and others, brought their own rules governing food. These laws shaped what snacks were acceptable on the road, creating a complex culinary mosaic. For example, Muslims avoided pork and alcohol, so their snacks leaned heavily on dried fruits, nuts, and beef or lamb jerky. Buddhists often followed vegetarian principles, favoring plant-based snacks like rice cakes and dried vegetables. Historians still argue the extent to which these dietary laws affected trade, whether traders actively sought out compliant snacks or adapted their own recipes to fit different faiths. Either way, respecting religious rules was essential to maintaining trust and smooth commerce. A quirky tidbit. Some traders developed hybrid snacks like sweetened dates stuffed with nuts that adhered to multiple dietary restrictions, making them popular across cultural divides. These snacks became edible ambassadors of tolerance. Imagine sharing a snack that everyone could enjoy, regardless of background. Small but powerful gesture of unity amid a sea of differences. Snack choices weren't just practical, okay? They were political and social statements, helping traders navigate the complex social landscape of the Silk Road. So next time you pick a snack that suits your beliefs or preferences, remember that ancient travelers were crafting and sharing foods with far more layers of meaning than just flavor. The sun beat steadily overhead as you consider the influence of nomadic cultures on snack development along the Silk Road. These hardy wanderers, moving with the seasons in their herds, crafted snacks that were as portable, durable, and caloried. So, as their lifestyles demanded, nomads didn't have the luxury of a stationary kitchen or frequent markets. Their snacks had to endure the rigors of constant movement in harsh climates. From the freezing steppe winters to scorching desert summers, dried meats, hard cheeses, nuts, and compressed grain cakes became staples. Engineered for survival and efficiency, historians still argue whether nomads invented certain preservation techniques or adopted them from settled cultures. For example, the Mongols are often credited with pioneering air-dried meats and fermented mare's milk, but these methods also appear in other regions, suggesting a shared knowledge or parallel innovation. Here's a quirky tidbit. Nomads sometimes used animal stomachs as natural containers, curing meats inside them to both preserve and pack snacks compactly, a practice that sounds bizarre today, but was ingeniously practical. These snacks were more than just food. They were portable lifelines, providing essential nutrients during long travels or battles. Their development reflects a blend of necessity, resourcefulness, and cultural tradition. Imagine yourself chewing on a dense, salty chunk of dried cheese that tastes sharp and satisfying, a reminder of the tough nomadic spirit that thrived on the Silk Road's fringes. So next time you snack on something durable and nourishing, think about the nomads whose innovative food strategies helped shape some of history's most resilient culinary traditions. The midday sun casts long shadows as you consider the profound influence of nomadic cultures on the development of Silk Road snacks. These mobile societies, herders, warriors, and wanderers shaped snack culture with their need for portable, durable, and calorie-dense foods perfectly suited to life on the move. Nomads couldn't rely on fresh produce or elaborate cooking during their constant migrations, so they innovated with what nature and their animals provided. Hard cheeses, dried meats, nuts, and dense grain cakes were staples, designed to endure months without spoilage. These snacks weren't just food. They were tools of survival, crafted with deep knowledge of preservation. Historians still argue how much nomadic snack practices influence settled agricultural societies along the Silk Road. Some suggest nomads introduced drying and fermenting techniques that later spread, while others believe the exchange was mutual and ongoing. A quirky tidbit: some nomadic tribes created fermented mare's milk snacks. It's not just drinks, portable, nutrient-rich blocks that could be stored and consumed on the trail. Snack form of their famous kumis beverage. Nomadic snack culture also reflected their spiritual beliefs, with certain foods reserved for rituals or gifted as symbols of respect and alliance. Sharing a rare piece of dried meat or cheese could seal agreements and friendships. Imagine the resilience required to thrive in such a harsh lifestyle, where every snack carried the weight of survival and community. Nomadic contributions to snack innovation echo through time, influencing tastes far beyond their original homes. So next time you enjoy a simple cheese stick or trail mix, Think of the nomads who first mastered the art of portable nutrition and gifted it to the world. As the sun shifts toward evening, you reflect on the art and science behind early snack packaging and storage, an often overlooked but critical aspect of Silk Road. Snacking. Keeping snacks fresh on dusty hot roads wasn't just a convenience. It was a necessity that demanded ingenuity and skill. Travelers and traders devised clever ways to protect their precious food from spoilage, contamination, and the ever-present threat of desert sand and mountain moisture. Animal skins, woven baskets, bamboo containers, and clay pots were all enlisted as vessels, often sealed with wax, resins, or tightly tied leather straps to ensure airtightness. Historians still argue about which materials were most effective or widespread, as regional resources and technologies varied widely. Some evidence points to surprisingly sophisticated packaging methods, including multi-layered wrappings combining organic and mineral materials for durability. A quirky tidbit: certain traders reportedly coated dried fruit bundles with a thin layer of honey or sugar syrup, creating a natural seal that protected the snack and added sweetness. Primitive but effective snack wrapper. Storage wasn't just about keeping food safe, but also about convenience. Compact, well-packaged snacks allowed traders to ration carefully, sharing small portions to extend supplies and maintain morale. Imagine unwrapping a tightly bound parcel after a day's travel, the scent of dried apricots mingling with the subtle resin sealant. The satisfying crackle of woven packaging giving way to a bite of energy and comfort. So, the next time you peel back a granola bar wrapper or pop open a sealed snack bag, remember the ancient travelers who first mastered the delicate balance of protection and portability, keeping their sustenance intact across thousands of miles. Twilight casts a soft glow as you savor the evolving fusion of sweet and savory flavors. A cultural experiment born from the endless exchanges along the Silk Road. This blending of tastes wasn't just accidental. It was a culinary revolution that reshaped what snacks could be. Traders, chefs, and home cooks alike began mixing ingredients from different lands, creating snacks that combined sugar with spices, nuts with dried fruits, and herbs with salty cheeses. Imagine bite-sized morsels of spiced nuts drizzled with honey, or dense grain cakes studded with tangy preserved plums. A marriage of flavors that delighted and surprised. Historians still debate how quickly these fusion snacks spread. Did they emerge first in cosmopolitan cities where cultures mingled, or along the trade routes themselves as travelers experimented with local ingredients? Either way, these innovations marked a turning point in snack history. A quirky tidbit: in some regions, traders crafted savory sweet meat pastes blended with sugar and spices. Snack that sounds strange today, but was a prized delicacy back then. These meat candies were often gifted to dignitaries or used to seal important agreements. This fusion extended to textures as well, combining crunchy and chewy elements in ways that made snacking an experience rather than just sustenance. It was an early form of snack innovation, driven by curiosity and cultural exchange. Imagine sharing a snack that surprises your palate with every bite. The flavors weaving stories of distant lands and adventurous journeys. This blending of sweet and savory wasn't just food, it was a celebration of the Silk Road's vibrant diversity. So next time you enjoy a honey-roasted nut or a spicy sweet snack mix, remember, you're tasting a legacy of creativity and connection stretching back millennia. The night deepens as you consider how snacks became more than just food. They were social currency, gifts, trade goods, and symbols of status among Silk Road travelers. Sharing the right snack could open doors, forge alliances, or demonstrate wealth and generosity. Picture a caravan leader offering rare candied fruits or spiced nuts as gifts to local officials, or merchants exchanging delicacies as part of trade negotiations. In a world where trust was fragile and journeys perilous, these edible tokens carried weight far beyond their calories. Historians still debate the extent to which snacks functioned as social currency versus mere sustenance. Some argue that certain delicacies were deliberately crafted and packaged to impress and curry favor, while others see sharing as a natural extension of hospitality, a quirky tidbit in some cultures. Gifting snacks wrapped in silk or adorned with precious spices was akin to presenting jewelry, signaling status and respect. The most prized snacks could be sealed in ornate containers, passed down as heirlooms. Snacks also marked social hierarchies within caravans. Nobles or wealthy merchants enjoyed luxury treats like saffron-infused sweets, while common traders made do with simpler fare. Yet, sharing a snack was a way to bridge these divides, fostering camaraderie amid hardship. Imagine sitting around a campfire, the exchange of snacks accompanied by stories and laughter, universal language that transcended borders and tongues. So, when you next share a snack with a friend, remember you're participating in a timeless tradition where food connects hearts and builds bridges. The Silk Road's golden days eventually faded, and with the decline of these ancient trade routes came changes in the snacks that once defined the journey. Yet some treats survived and morphed, leaving a legacy woven into modern cuisines. As sea routes opened and empires shifted, overland trade lessened, and with it, the direct exchange of certain foods. However, many snacks adapted, becoming staples in local diets far from their origins. Dried fruits turned into preserved delicacies in Middle Eastern kitchens, while spiced nuts evolved into regional favorites across Central Asia. Historians still debate how directly modern snack traditions descend from Silk Road ancestors. Some argue that many recipes were reinvented locally, influenced but not copied, while others highlight clear culinary lineages. A quirky tidbit, the beloved Turkish delight, that sweet, gel-like confection dusted with powdered sugar, is believed to have roots in ancient Silk Road candies, evolving through centuries of cultural fusion and refinement. Imagine the familiar tastes of your favorite snacks carrying echoes of traders and travelers who journeyed long ago, their recipes whispered down generations. So, while the Silk Road itself may have faded into history, its snacks live on reminders of a time when food was both survival and story, linking continents through flavor. You're nearing the end of your long journey, the stars overhead twinkling softly as you reflect on the forgotten snacks of the Silk Road and the possibility of rediscovering these ancient flavors today. In our modern world, with instant gratification and endless convenience, these humble, time-tested treats invite us to slow down and savor connection. Many of the original Silk Road snacks, dried fruits, nuts, spiced blends, fermented bites still exist, albeit in evolved forms. But countless others have slipped into obscurity, waiting patiently to be unearthed by curious palates. Rediscovering them offers not just gustatory pleasure, but a bridge to history, culture, and human resilience. Historians still argue how accurately we can recreate these ancient snacks, given the gaps in records and changing environments. Yet, culinary archaeologists and food historians are passionate about reviving lost recipes, piecing together ingredients and techniques from texts, artifacts, and oral traditions. A quirky thought: imagine a trendy cafe serving tamarind and rose petal snacks, or fermented mare's milk bite ancient snacks reborn for the modern Epicurean, offering more than taste, but a story steeped in time and travel. Trying these forgotten snacks can transform eating into a meditative act, connecting you two traders who walked deserts and mountains centuries ago. It's a delicious reminder that food is a memory, culture, and journey all rolled into one. So as you drift towards sleep, imagine tasting the past each bite, a whisper of history and a soft step on the ancient Silk Road, inviting you to dream of far-off lands and shared human experience. The journey we've shared tonight along the ancient Silk Road is more than a tale of trade routes, a story woven with flavors, friendships, and the human spirit's resilience. As your eyes grow heavy and your mind drifts, let these images soften like the fading glow of a campfire, the scent of spiced nuts lingering in the cool night air. You've tasted the sweet tang of dried fruits and the bold bite of fermented snacks, felt the crunch of ancient grains and the warmth of tea, shared beneath star-studded skies. These snacks, once essential lifelines, are now whispers from the past, inviting you to slow down and savor the richness of history. Rest easy, knowing that the road continues, not just beneath your feet, but in the stories you carry, in the dreams you dream. May the quiet hum of the night and the gentle rustle of silk remind you that we are all connected across time and space by the simple act of sharing food. Good night, traveler, until our next journey together.